Before we begin today's rather dark tale from the shed, might I trouble you to press that like button below? And if you haven't already subscribed to Ruin Afterwards, do consider doing so. Right then, let's meet Fred Pemberton. Fred Pemberton's house sits somewhere in the home counties. Small, humble, beige walls, IKEA furniture that's seen better days. Fred arrives home from work, setting his battered briefcase down with the same precise care he applies to everything. His girlfriend Venetia sits on the sofa, scrolling her phone. She doesn't look up. Evening. I picked up that organic quinoa you wanted. You're late. Ah, yes, viewing ran over. Client wanted to see the loft conversion again in different light. And of course the access ladder requires a specific technique to deploy safely. So I felt it important to demonstrate the proper... God, Fred, do you ever stop droning on? Fred sets down the shopping bag. I thought we might have dinner together. I'm meeting Camilla at Harvey Nichols. Some of us have social lives, you know. She finally looks at him. The contempt isn't even thinly veiled anymore. You've got that look. You want to go play with your stupid car again, don't you? Well, I had planned to adjust the carburettor mixture. The Jensen-Healey has been running slightly rich and... Honestly, Fred, 50 years old, playing with toys in a garage, you're pathetic. She grabs her mulberry bag, heads for the door, stops. Oh, and my friend Mrs. Davina Smedley Carter needs an estate agent. I gave her your number. Try not to bore her to death with your expertise. The door slams. Fred stands alone in the beige living room. His phone buzzes. Unknown number. The text reads, Fred, Mrs. Davina Smedley Carter. Venetia gave me your details. Looking for a property. Very specific requirements. Could you call? Through the kitchen window, his garage is visible. The nose of a British racing green Jensen-Healey just visible in the darkness. Fred allows himself the faintest hint of a smile. Yes, of course. I'll compile a comprehensive portfolio. Tomorrow he'll call Mrs. Smedley Carter. Tonight, there's a carburettor that needs attention. Morning light filters through a small window. Fred stands before his 1974 Jensen-Healey, bonnet open. He's working through his checklist with religious devotion. Fred Pemberton keeps a clipboard specifically for the Jensen-Healey. Not for his property viewings, he has separate clipboards for those, but this one is for the car itself. Fred leans over the engine bay with a torch, inspecting. This morning, like every morning, Fred works through his pre-journey checks. Cam tower oil seepage, within acceptable parameters. They use sealant instead of proper gaskets on the 907, you see. Cost-cutting, typical of the era. Fred monitors it weekly. Fred straightens up, making a note. Moves to check something else. The water pump is holding nicely. He replaced it preventatively last year. 3 hours of work. Requires complete front-end teardown. Fred opens the bonnet wider, revealing the twin Stromberg carburettors. He runs a finger along them, checking, then pulls out a cloth and begins a gentle polish. The twin Zenith Stromberg 175 CDSE carburettors. Emissions-era units, rather fussy. Fred rebuilt the diaphragms last month. Fresh vacuum hoses throughout. Heat shield properly installed to prevent vapor lock. Many owners swap to Del Autos or Webers, but that would compromise originality. Fred is aiming for Concours stock. Fred closes the bonnet with satisfaction, runs his hand along the wing. The car gleams. The Jensen-Healey is Fred's one perfect thing, the one aspect of his life that responds predictably to care and attention. His property viewings, less so. Thursday evening at Prestige Properties. Fluorescent lights humming. 6 estate agents with headsets sitting in the ballroom are making cold calls for listings and buyers. Half-eaten Domino's pizza boxes lay about. Thursday nights at Prestige Properties mean pizza and phones. Cold calling for potential buyers and sellers. The other agents work their calls with energy. Quick pitches, handling objections, moving on. Fred has a different approach. Fred sits with a meticulously handwritten script, reading in absolute monotone. And of course, the current market conditions in the Bishops Avenue catchment area represent a unique opportunity for discerning buyers such as yourself to capitalize on both the immediate residential benefits and the long-term appreciation potential inherent in properties of this caliber. At Mrs. Davina Smedley Carter's house, the phone sits on a marble counter. We can faintly hear Fred's voice droning from the receiver. A woman in Lululemon walks past, sees the phone, shakes her head with a slight smile, continues making her green smoothie. She leaves the room. Fred is still talking. Sarah, an accomplished agent in her 30s, sharp, finishes a call, marks it, dials the next number, completes another pitch, hangs up. Fred is still on the same call. Architectural features that define the particular character of homes in this postcode, including but not limited to the Victorian terrace conversions, the Edwardian semi-detached properties with original coving. Another agent glances over, mouths to Sarah, "Still on the first call?" She nods, stifling a laugh. Back in Mrs. Davina Smedley Carter's kitchen, the phone still sits there. A television is now on in the background. Someone's watching the news. Fred doesn't notice. Back at Prestige Properties, Sarah and 3 other agents finish their calls. They pack up, done for the night, and wave goodbye. Just Fred now. Retail opportunities in the area, which include not only your major supermarket chains, and here I'm thinking primarily of Waitrose, though there is also a Sainsbury's local, and if memory serves, a Tesco Express, though I'd need to verify that. He pauses. "Hello? Hello? Are you still there? Hello?" Silence. "Hello? Hello?" He hangs up, carefully marks his sheet. "Disconnected. Follow up next week." Begins dialing the next number. This is how Fred eventually worked out details with Mrs. Davina Smedley Carter. She was the one person who didn't hang up, not because she was interested, but because she found Fred's droning oddly soothing during her evening yoga routine. Fred mistook this for genuine interest. Back to present day. Outside Fred's garage, a black Range Rover pulls up, slightly blocking the driveway, carelessly parked. Davina Smedley Carter, early 40s, expensive camel coat, silk scarf, designer sunglasses, gets out, phone already to her ear. Davina, into phone. No, tell Marcus the original offer, not the revised." "Yes, I know what I said, because I've changed my mind, obviously." Fred emerges from the garage, clipboard in hand, beaming with professional enthusiasm. Fred, "Mrs. Smedley Carter, wonderful morning. I think you're going to find the properties I've selected really—" Davina holds up one finger. "Not yet. She's still on the phone." Fred waits, smiling. He's good at waiting. Davina, into phone. "Hold on." To Fred, not looking at him. "Right, let's make this quick. I have Thompson and Clark at 2, Savills at 3:30. Fred, "Of course. Very sensible to compare. Now, I thought we'd start with the Edwardian semi in..." Davina, walking toward his car, wrinkling her nose. "Is that your car?" Fred, brightening immediately. "Ah, yes, Jensen-Healey, 1974. Rather significant historically, you know." Davina, into phone, which has rung again. "Darling, no, I'm about to be driven around in some..." "What is it?" To Fred. "What did you say it was?" Fred, Jensen-Healey. You see, when Donald Healey's contract with BMC expired in 1968, he found himself rather... Davina, into phone, laughing. "Some vintage thing. God knows. At least it's not a Fiat." She opens the passenger door without waiting, still on her phone. Fred stands there, his historical lecture dying on his lips, then gets in the driver's seat. The Jensen-Healey starts immediately, a crisp, healthy idle. Whatever else Fred might be, he knows how to maintain a temperamental British sports car. They pull out of the garage. In the Jensen-Healey, Fred driving, Davina examining her nails. Fred starts his Jensen-Healey history narrative. The Jensen-Healey really is quite a fascinating story. When Healey's contract with BMC expired, that's British Motor Corporation, he found himself somewhat adrift. 17 years of Jensen-Healeys, all that glorious history with the 100, the 106, the 3000, simply abandoned when British Leyland decided they had quite enough sports car marques with MG and Triumph and didn't need the Healey name anymore. Davina files a nail, doesn't look up. Fred drones on. So Jensen Motors, themselves rather bereft after losing various bodybuilding contracts, and Healey joined forces. Two proud British names trying to survive the carnage of the early 70s motor industry. The idea was sound, actually. Create an affordable British sports car to compete with the Triumph TR6 and MGB GT, particularly targeting the American market. He downshifts smoothly, approaching a roundabout. Fred continues. The Lotus 907 engine was specially developed. 2-litre double overhead cam, 16-valve 4-cylinder. Quite advanced for the time, 140 brake horsepower. Mated to a Chrysler 4-speed initially, later a 5-speed. William Townes did the styling. He'd designed the Aston Martin DBS, you know. Davina's phone buzzes. She checks it immediately, smiling at something. Unfazed, Fred rambles on. On paper, it should have worked beautifully. In practice, well, the execution was rather less inspired than the concept. Early engines were notoriously unreliable. Timing belt issues, camshaft problems. Quality control was poor. Electrical gremlins. Lucas wiring, you see, everything interconnected in ways that defy rational electrical theory. He glances at the temperature gauge, satisfied. Fred. By 1975, Jensen was in receivership. Production limped along until 1976, when the company finally collapsed. Only about 10,500 built. It's a fascinating what-could-have-been story, really. Brilliant concept, terrible execution, wrong timing. Davina, not looking up from phone. Fred, taking this as engagement, proceeds with the history lesson. Of course, with proper maintenance, they're perfectly reliable. The key is staying on top of the known issues. Cam tower seepage, for instance. They used sealant instead of gaskets. Cost cutting. I monitor mine weekly. And the Lucas electrics require diligence. Bullet connectors oxidize if you even think about moisture. I've added 3 earth straps, upgraded to a blade-type fuse panel. Davina, into her phone, which has rung. Yes? No, I'm in transit to a viewing. Some estate agent explaining his car's genealogy or something. Look, I'll call you back. Fred continues, undaunted, explaining the cooling system upgrades while Davina checks her email. In the interior of a modest semi-detached house, magnolia walls, original cornicing. Fred stands in the hallway, clipboard raised, pointing to architectural details. The cornicing is original Victorian plasterwork, quite rare to find it in this condition. The craftsmanship really is... Davina walks past him into the kitchen, phone to her ear. No, I'm being shown around some semi in... Where are we? Meadowbank Road. It's actually quite a desirable... Somewhere beginning with M. The agent's very... thorough. Look, I'll call you back. This won't take long. She opens a kitchen cupboard, closes it without looking inside. Tiny, as expected. Well, for a property in this price range. Remind me what I said my budget was. £120,000 to £140,000, which this property at £132,000... Did I? I thought I'd said up to £200,000. Perhaps that was to Savills. One does rather lose track when one's viewing with multiple agents. Well, I have some lovely properties in that range I could show you. No, we're here now. Might as well see the rest, though I can already tell the energy is all wrong. Her phone rings again. She answers immediately, walking toward the back window. Darling? No, suffering through a viewing. No reason, really, just something to do. I've got that boutique agent after this, then Hamptons tomorrow morning. Fred stands in the kitchen, still holding his clipboard with careful notes she'll never read. Leaving the property, Fred catches sight of the Jensen-Healey's reflection in a shop window. The near side brake light isn't illuminating. Fred utters, "Oh no, 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 no." He pulls over immediately. This is unacceptable. Fred gets out, walks to the rear, taps the lens, gets back in. Fred says to Mrs. Davina Smedley Carter, "It appears that one of my brake lights may have failed. Could you just step out and have a look at the lights at the rear of the car while I test?" Davina sighs quietly, steps out without putting down her phone, and walks to the rear of the Jensen-Heeley. Fred presses on the brake pedal and asks, "Is the brake light on?" Davina, "It's not working." Fred jumps out and opens his small toolkit from the boot. Fred mutters to himself, "Typical Lucas. I only cleaned every bullet connector last month." He jiggles a connector, applies contact spray. Fred jumps back in and tries it again. "Lights on now?" Davina responds, looking bored. "Yes, the light works now," Fred states, satisfied with his repair. "That should hold. Oxidation, you see, the eternal enemy." They continue to the next viewing. Davina checks her watch. Fred is diligently looking for the right property for Davina and spots a "For Sale by Owner" sign. A Georgian townhouse. Professional "For Sale by Owner" sign is displayed in the garden. Fred's Jensen-Heeley parks at the curb. Fred decides to solicit the "by owner" for a showing and potential listing. Fred says to himself, perhaps the owner could be persuaded of the benefits of professional representation. The owner, Graham, 50s, fit, in weekend casual wear, answers the door. Behind him, Kaiser, the German shepherd, watches. Fred introduces himself. "Good morning. Fred Pemberton, Prestige Properties. I couldn't help but notice your rather impressive property is currently on the market. I have a buyer looking for a home in this neighbourhood, and I thought I'd make contact to arrange a viewing. Have you considered marketing your home through an agent? I'd love to discuss how my services might facilitate a more expeditious sale by leveraging our extensive database of qualified buyers." Graham, polite but firm, "It's for sale by owner, says so on the sign." Fred drones, "Yes, which is why I wanted to explain the various benefits of professional representation, because while I understand the independent approach, there are numerous complexities inherent in the conveyancing process that many sellers underestimate, including the legal documentation, the negotiation strategies, the marketing optimization." Graham's patience thins. Kaiser stands up. Graham, "Look, I don't need your help. If you've got a buyer, you can send them through, but I'm not paying a commission." Fred, unfazed, "But viewings are merely the initial stage of what is actually a quite intricate multi-step process, and what I've found in my 17 years of experience is that unrepresented sellers often struggle with the subsequent phases, particularly when it comes to evaluating offers, managing the chain." Graham, stepping aside, "Kaiser! Sick 'em!" The German shepherd bounds out through the door, growling, snapping at Fred's heels and chasing him off the property. Fred runs for his life, dropping his briefcase, which bursts open, leaving a trail of listing papers strewn across the yard. Fred retreats to his car, rolls down the window, and calls back to the owner. "Just keep my card, and call me when you are ready. The market data really does suggest that agent-assisted sales achieve on average 7 to 12% higher final sale prices." Kaiser returns to Graham. Graham looks at Kaiser lovingly and says, "Good boy." Fred drives off into the distance. Later, Fred parks his Jensen-Heeley outside a cafe, making notes. Fred, "For sale by owner, Dulwich, Georgian. Owner resistant to professional guidance. Dog ownership noted. Security concerns. Follow up in 2 weeks." He genuinely believes this is a viable lead. The next day, Fred calls an agent who had a modern mansion listed. He asks to preview the property in advance to showing it to Davina. Fred wants to preview to make sure the property has all the ambience and amenities that Davina is looking for. The agent rings Fred back and explains that the lady of the house, Helena, will show Fred through at 4 o'clock this afternoon. The house is a modern mansion, glass and steel, infinity pool visible. Fred's Jensen-Heeley looks modest, parked next to a Range Rover and Porsche Cayenne. In the interior of the mansion, Helena, early 40s, athletic, wearing expensive athletic leisure wear, shows Fred through. Helena, playing owner-agent, says, "The kitchen's Bulthaup, imported from Germany, 40,000 just for the cabinetry." Fred, frantically scribbling notes, responds, "Yes, Mrs. Smedley Carter will certainly appreciate the modernist floor plan, though I should note she did mention a preference for more traditional architectural vernacular. However, the contemporary aesthetic does have its own merits, particularly in terms of the spatial flow." And on he rumbles. They reach the master bedroom suite. Enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows, a balcony overlooking the pool. Fred, walking onto the balcony, is still making notes. "And this balcony, is it structural or cantilevered? Because there are building regulation implications depending on the construction method, and insurance companies can be particular about..." Heavy footsteps are heard as a door slams. Philip, Helena's husband, red-faced, furious, bursts in. Philip, "Helena! What the hell is going on?" Helena, "Philip, you said you'd be in London." Philip, "I got a call from the neighbour saying there's a strange man in our house with my wife." Fred, turning, oblivious to the domestic disturbance. "Ah, yes, I'm Fred Pemberton, Prestige Properties. Your wife has been most helpful, though I do have some questions about the taxes and maintenance expense, and whether there are any restrictive covenants regarding..." Philip, "Service charges? You're on my balcony with my wife." Helena, "Philip, he's an estate agent. I told you." Fred says enthusiastically, "Yes, on behalf of my client, Mrs. Smedley Carter, who is actively seeking properties in this price bracket, and your home does meet several of her specified criteria, though there are considerations regarding the modernist aesthetic which may not align with her preferences for more traditional." Philip grabs Fred by the lapels. Fred, "Sir, I must protest. This is highly irregular, and I should mention that assault of a property professional is taken quite seriously by the local constabulary and the National Association of Estate Agents." Philip lifts Fred toward the balcony railing. Philip, "I'll show you some restrictive covenants." Fred, "And furthermore, there are health and safety implications, particularly at this elevation, which I estimate to be approximately 18 to 20 feet above the pool level. And while the water depth may provide some mitigation..." Philip launches Fred over the railing. Fred, "I really must insist that we discuss this in a more professional manner." Fred surfaces, still clutching his waterlogged briefcase. Climbs out, water pouring from his clothes. He looks up at them. "Well, this is an interesting presentation. I'll send over the particulars once I've had a chance to dry my notes. Though I should mention, the pool temperature is quite pleasant. Mrs. Smedley Carter did inquire about heated pools." He squelches toward the Jensen-Heeley, sets the dripping briefcase carefully on a plastic Tesco bag to protect the passenger seat. Gets in. The Jensen starts first time. Fred drives away, puddle forming on the floor of the Jensen-Heeley, his defrost fan clearing his own drips from the inside of the glass. That evening, Fred spends a little personal time in the shed with his precious Jensen-Heeley. He has carefully mopped up, cleaned and thoroughly dried the water mishap at today's viewing. All is good, and now Fred wants to address a polishing issue that has been living rent-free in his head for weeks. The Jensen-Heeley is up on 4 jack stands, all wheels off. Fred sits on his rolling stool wearing nitrile gloves, jeweller's magnifier on his forehead, supplies laid out with hospital precision, 3 grades of metal polish labelled initial, secondary, final, cotton Q-tips, microfiber cloths and a timer. Fred applies initial grade polish to 1 lug nut, circular motions, clockwise, exactly 20 rotations, sets the timer, waits 30 seconds. His phone rings. He ignores it. Wipes off polish, inspects with magnifier, nods. Applies secondary grade, 15 counterclockwise rotations. Phone rings again. Eye twitch. Keeps polishing. Final grade. 10 gentle clockwise rotations. Inspects. Perfect mirror shine. 1 lug nut done. 19 to go. Phone buzzes. Text alert. Then another. Then a call. Fred sets down his cloth with irritation. Peels off 1 glove. Checks phone. Text from Davina. Fred, we have an emergency. Need to see that Weybridge property tomorrow. Can you do 4 p.m? Fred looks at his partially polished wheel, at the 3 wheels waiting, at his precisely laid out station. Types back with 1 finger. I'm in the middle of essential maintenance. Davina. It's the weekend, Fred. Surely you can spare an hour tomorrow. This could be the one. Fred stares at his 1 perfect lug nut, at the 19 waiting. Very carefully sets down the phone, peels off 2nd glove, reattaches the wheels, looks at the Jensen and says, I'll be back. We'll finish this properly. Pats the car's bonnet, goes to grab his jacket. Fred. The Weybridge property, number 998. The next day, Fred arranges a tour of homes for Davina to see, including the emergency Weybridge property. It is a rainy day and they visit several homes together. At the first home, Davina wrinkles her nose and dismisses the property forthwith. She says she doesn't want to see it and tells Fred to tell the listing agent that she's not interested. Fred carries an elaborate folder of listings. Davina barely glances. Fred demonstrates period features. Davina ignores Fred and spends most of her time on the phone. Fred shows the properties in the rain, holding an umbrella for Davina. She's underwhelmed. Fred's suit gets progressively more rumpled, stained and soaked. Davina's comments, too modern, too traditional, wrong light, bad energy. I'm viewing this area with Thompson and Clark tomorrow. Fred makes endless notes. Fred remains earnest and hopeful, muttering in each viewing, this could be the one. Over the next several months, Fred dutifully shows Davina literally every listing in her preferred neighbourhood and price range. Davina has narrowed her search down to 1 single property that Fred has shown her 4 times before. It is a pleasant, detached house in Surrey. Fred has arranged yet another viewing and pulled up curbside in the Jensen-Healey. This is the 5th viewing. Davina walks through with that same detached expression. Both Fred and Davina view the property thoroughly, return to, and sit in the Jensen-Healey to discuss the property. Davina says, I've been thinking about furniture placement. That wall could be opened up, and a new kitchen. The garden would need landscaping. Fred makes notes eagerly. This is progress. She's visualizing herself here. Fred says, absolutely. The structure is sound, so renovation options are flexible. And at the price point, there's room in your budget for... Davina turns to face Fred with a casual smile. You know what, Fred? Fred responds hopefully. Yes? Davina says, when you dropped me off yesterday evening, I stopped by an open house on the way home, just out of curiosity. Fred nods, still smiling. Davina continues, the property was just perfect and the agent was very accommodating. It was the perfect home for me, in the perfect location. And so I made an offer and bought it. It completes on Wednesday afternoon. Fred's smile doesn't change. His clipboard hangs at his side. All those viewings, all those careful notes, all that petrol in the Jensen-Healey, all those hours. For nothing. For her entertainment. Davina adds, adding a bit of salt to Fred's gaping wound. So I won't be needing your services after all. But thanks ever so much for your time. You've been very thorough. That word again, like it's a character flaw. Davina concludes, really, I am sorry for the inconvenience. I do hope you find a buyer for this place. It's actually quite sweet. She extends her hand for a handshake, already half turned to exit the car. Fred is gobsmacked and sits motionless at the wheel. Fred remains at the wheel of his Jensen-Heeley, his hands on the wheel, but in his mind he is in another place. His eyes are glazed over, unfocused, and looking past Davina into distant space. His expression has gone blank and absent. Something in Fred's mind has stepped sideways. Sounds have become muffled, Davina's voice echoing. The edges of Fred's vision are a blur. The world has taken on a slightly unreal quality. Colours oversaturated. The lighting is wrong. Fred utters, "Mrs. Smedley Carter, before you go..." Davina dismissively responds, "Yes." Fred looks into Davina's eyes one more time and says, "I think the brake light's playing up again. Would you mind terribly?" "Oh, God, Fred, do I really need to?" Fred, with a curious smile, says, "Just a moment. Can't drive with faulty brake lights. It's not safe." Davina moans but exits the Jensen-Heeley and stands at the rear looking at the brake lights. She stands in the same position as before, behind the car, arms crossed, waiting for this tedious man and his tedious car to finish being tedious. Fred starts the car. He opens his window and calls to Davina. The world feels suspended, unreal. Time moves slowly, differently. Fred sits at the wheel. The engine is revving smoothly. He has one hand on the gear lever and his left foot on the clutch. Looking out the driver's side window, he calls. Davina is standing directly behind the Jensen-Heeley, looking down at the brake lights with profound boredom. Fred calls, "Can you see all right back there?" Davina whines, "Yes, yes. Just get on with it." Fred calls, "Brakes on?" He presses the brake pedal. The lights glow red. Davina, "Yes, they're on." Fred, "Brakes off?" He releases the pedal. Lights go dark. Davina, "Yes, Fred. They work fine. Can I go now?" Fred formulates a demonic smile and says, "Almost done. Just one more thing." Fred, "How about the reverse lights?" The reverse lights blaze white. Davina's expression begins to change from bored to confused. Fred places the transmission in reverse, guns the engine and drops the clutch. The Jensen-Heeley, his precious Jensen-Heeley, the one thing in his life that responds to his care, that he understands completely, that he has absolute control over. The Lotus 907 engine, 140 horsepower, responsive, obedient. For once in his life, Fred Pemberton has the power. For once, there are consequences. For just once. Later that night, Fred returns to his shed. The Jensen-Heeley back on its jack stands. All four wheels are off. Fred sits on his rolling stool, nitrile gloves on, returning to his lug nut polishing. The 3 grades of polish: initial, secondary, and final. He picks up where he left off. Circular motions, clockwise, 20 rotations. Some things, at least, he can control. The Strombergs will need balancing next week. The cam towers require monitoring. Fred makes a note on his clipboard. The Jensen-Heeley sits patiently on its stands, waiting for his attention. Tomorrow there will be other clients, other viewings, other properties to show. But tonight, there's just Fred and his precious Jensen-Heeley and the quiet ritual of maintenance. If you enjoyed this rather unsettling tale of Fred and his Jensen-Heeley, you'll find more stories like this in our Jilted Lovers from the Shed series. Men and their cars, obsession, desperation, the occasional descent into madness. Do click that subscribe button if you haven't already. We've got quite a few more of these to tell. And if you'd like to suggest a car or a character for a future episode, drop it in the comments below. I rather enjoy reading them.